We'll now recognize the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Walberg, for 5 minutes.
I thank the chairman, and thank you, Director Comey, for being here. Mr. Chairman, thank you for holding this hearing, and Director Comey for making it very clear that you believe we've done this respectfully with good intention. And I wish some of my colleagues that had instructed us on our intent were here. They have a great ability to understand intent better than, I guess, the director of the FBI. But it is an intent that's important here, that we understand we are Oversight and Government Reform Committee. And if indeed the tools aren't there to make sure that our country is secure and that officials at the highest levels in our land don't have the understanding on what it takes to keep our country secure, that we do the necessary government reform to put laws in place that will be effective and will meet the needs of distinguished agencies and important agencies like the FBI. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for doing this hearing. It's our responsibility to do oversight and reform as necessary. In going back, Director Comey, to paraphrase the Espionage Act, the people in the 7th District of Michigan understand it from this perspective in common sense what it says, that whoever being entrusted with information related to national defense through gross negligence permits the information to be removed from its proper place in violation of their trust shall be fined or imprisoned under the statute. There doesn't seem to be a double standard there. It doesn't express intent. You've explained your understanding of why intent is needed, and we may agree or disagree on that, but the general public looking at that statute says it's pretty clear. The question I would ask, Director Comey, what's your definition of extremely careless, if you could go through that?
I intended it as a common sense term. It's one of those kind of you know it when you see it sort of things. Somebody who is should know better. Someone who is demonstrating a lack of care that strikes me as there's ordinary accidents and then there's just real sloppiness. So I think of that as kind of real sloppiness.
So you stated that you had found 110 emails on Secretary Clinton's server that were classified at the time they were sent or received, yet Secretary Clinton has insisted for over a year publicly that she never sent or received any classified emails. The question I have from that, would it be difficult for any cabinet-level official, and specifically any cabinet official, let alone one who is a former White House resident or U.S. Senator, to determine if information is classified?
Would it be difficult?
Would it be difficult?
That's hard to answer in the abstract. It would depend upon the context in which they're hearing it or seeing it. Obviously, if it's marked, which is why we require markings, it's easy. It's just too hard to answer because there's so many other situations you might encounter it.
But with the training that we receive, and certainly a Secretary of State would receive, or someone who lives in the White House, that goes a little above and beyond just the common sense individual out there trying to determine, knowing that classified information will be brought and to remove to an unauthorized site ought to cause a bit of pause there, shouldn't it?
Yeah, and if you're a government official, you should be attentive to it because you know that the matters you deal with could involve sensitive information, so sure.
So Secretary Clinton's revised statement that she never knowingly sent or received any classified information is probably also untrue.
Yeah, I don't want to comment on people's public statements. We did not find evidence sufficient to establish that she knew she was sending classified information beyond a reasonable doubt to meet that the intent standard. But like I said, I understand why people are confused by the whole discussion. I get that. But you know what would be a double standard? If she were prosecuted for gross negligence.
But your statement on Tuesday said there is evidence to support a conclusion that any reasonable person in Secretary Clinton's position should have known that an unclassified system was no place for that conversation.
I stand by that.
And that's very clear.
That's the definition of carelessness, of negligence.
Which happened as a result of our Secretary of State's, former Secretary of State's decisions.
Yes.
Is it your statement then before this committee that Secretary Clinton should have known not to send classified material, and yet she did?
Well, certainly she should have known not to send classified information. As I said, that's the definition of negligent. I think she was extremely careless. I think she was negligent. That I could establish. What we can't establish is that she acted with the necessary criminal intent.
Do you believe that that since the Department of Justice hasn't used the statute Congress passed, it's invalid?
No, I think they're worried that it's invalid, that it will be challenged on constitutional grounds, which is why they've used it extraordinarily sparingly in the decades.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank